Hello and welcome back to The Independent Pianist. I am your host, Cole Anderson, and today I want to address an issue that I often get questions about. I guess it really boils down to the often heard question after solo recitals: how do you play so many things by memory all at once? It can seem really miraculous, especially if you haven't actually been doing the work every day. But today I actually want to go into exactly how you could go about preparing a substantial solo recital. This issue actually requires a pretty subtle answer to truly understand what is needed to replicate the feat of performing an entire piano recital. Actually playing a 70 to 80 minute program of music and being able to depend on a high level of playing for every piece on that program at any time, whether you are in the mood or not, is no mean accomplishment, and it requires a unique kind of discipline. I think that arguably the most important quality of this discipline that great concertizing pianists display is superb organizational skills. And this is what people are usually totally unaware of when they go and see a great pianist playing a concert. I think generally there are two kinds of misconceptions that most amateurs and lay people and even experienced artists might have about this. On the one hand, you might think that once someone knows a piece, they just know it and they never have to practice again, and all they have to do is just show up and play the concert, which is definitely not the case. On the other hand, you might think that it takes a lot of time, 7 days a week, to prepare a recital. You may even have heard stories like the one about Paderewski, which he recounts in his autobiography. He said that he supposedly had to work, 8 to 10 hours a day when preparing a recital, even if he'd played all the pieces many times before. I don't think either extreme is really exactly correct as being the only way it has to be. It certainly does take time to prepare a recital, even if you already know the pieces. But I think, on the other hand, this level of obsessiveness is not necessarily the most efficient way to go, although it no doubt works in its way as well, especially if you have that much time. From my own perspective, I believe that it's actually quite possible to organize a normal 3 to 4 hour practice day in such a way that you can not only keep a complex concert program in your fingers, or even more than one program, along with concerti, but also work on brand new pieces that can be worked into your repertoire for performance in the future. It really mostly has to do with how you go about knowing every piece on your program. You have to condition yourself such that every piece on that program will be at your fingertips at a moment's notice, and this requires a very different approach to practicing than what you normally hear in conservatory practice rooms. From my experience, which is by no means comprehensive, but just from my own experience at music schools, usually when people are learning a new piece to bring to their lesson or to play in a concert, they will spend all of their time on that piece. They'll try to practice it into the ground, and the result is that they do indeed know that one piece extremely well. But then if they actually want to present a full recital, they have to learn another piece in the same way, and another, and in the meantime, they may feel like they don't remember the piece that they started with. So it's easy to assume that you always need this kind of intensity at all times when practicing repertoire, especially when you're faced with the nerves that accompany performing for a large group of people. But this is actually not the case. It's another case of the situation where actually practicing more than you need can be counterproductive, too much of a good thing. So we really need to shift our focus a little bit and take a different, more economical approach when preparing a full recital. One thing to keep in mind whenever you go to a concert and hear some famous artist present a program of solo works, particularly if it is by memory, the likelihood is that they will have learned all the pieces on that program at some separate point long in the past. So they already have a powerful baseline of familiarity with the music. It shouldn't be underestimated what an effect this has on the performer psychologically, how much confidence this brings you. Although it's certainly possible to prepare a work and then immediately perform it for a huge crowd, we shouldn't underestimate what a mental toll this takes on the artist, and in fact how unusual this is in reality. So taking that as our starting point, that we will probably have already learned the pieces on our concert program at some point in the past, at least once. How should we organize our practice day such that we can both learn new music, keep our fingers limber, and also keep a recital program in performing readiness? So to explain this, I will outline one possible way of accomplishing this using a sample of one of my own practicing routines as an example. All the timings that I'm outlining here are variable depending on what I feel I want or need to do on any given day, but generally I organize my practicing something like this. So we have a 30 to 35 minute warm-up. This is very intense, focuses on double notes for the most part, although I do also some regular scale work and other special exercises. Then I would usually do 1 to 1.5 hours on brand new repertoire. This is usually stuff that I'm planning to record on this channel. And usually I would finish up with 1 to 1.5 hours working on whatever recital program I have at the moment. So this is generally, of course, as I said, all repertoire I've learned at some point in the past. When I'm working on new repertoire, I will be doing more complete playthroughs more often than when I'm working on a recital program. And this is because this repertoire is much newer to me, so I am forging an initial interpretation. I'm finding my big picture approach to the music. With a concert program, I generally only do a lot of complete run-throughs of things right before the performance, maybe only the last day or two, in fact, because I'm well familiar with this music from a long period of time, and I need to keep it, of course, fresh in my fingers and memory without overworking things, without working it to the extent that it becomes stale. Generally, my refinement of interpretation for this music happens in my off time when I happen to be thinking about the music, or even in my subconscious in between practice sessions. So as I said, for the most part, when I'm working on my concert program, I tend to avoid complete run-throughs. Instead, I will generally just take one section from each piece to work on for a certain length of time, and I will cycle through all the pieces on the program so that I end up coming back to the same section multiple times if I feel that that section needs more improvement. Once I feel that I'm falling into a habitual way of playing a particular passage, I switch to a different one for that piece. So to make this as concrete as possible, here's a concert program that I'm working on at the moment. So one practice round might look something like this. might go through all the pieces again, and maybe this time I would switch some sections out for different ones. But maybe some particularly difficult sections I would keep the same until I really felt that I had made a difference in them. If I feel like one piece doesn't need as much attention, I might leave it out of the rotation. It's all subject to change. I also sometimes change up the order of the pieces so that there's plenty of variety and freshness for my mind. And I might go through all the pieces 6 or 7 times in this way, either repeating one particular passage or moving between different ones, always attempting to start each passage with no recourse from the printed page so that I can really start any reasonable place in any piece from memory. As an aside, it's also very interesting to consider how to put a program together. I developed this particular program because of its complementary contrasts. So the whole program is bookended by the 2 Schubert groups, which show diametrically opposing sides of Schubert's compositional style. The Ravel set, while it's very different in its technical approach to the keyboard, has a certain kinship with Schubert's kind of gentle melancholy and nostalgia. And it's really only a step from the language of French Impressionist neoclassicism to the style of modern tango represented by Naresol and Astor Piazzolla. At any rate, practicing in this way has 2 salutary effects. First of all, it's superb for memory. Although I have spoken before about how unnecessary it is always to perform by memory, nonetheless, I like to still train my memory, and in most cases, I still enjoy performing from memory whenever I can. To really secure memory, however, you have to be out of the phase where it's necessary for you to be playing the entire piece through every day in order to feel confident that you can still remember everything. You need to have gone through a few phases where you have allowed yourself to forget the piece and then refresh your memory. This should happen periodically until the music is well and truly second nature to you, until you know it so well that you really can't forget it. And that's exactly what this method helps you to accomplish, albeit on a smaller scale. I think of it as being somewhat akin to the spaced repetition systems that you so often hear about in language learning communities as being a highly effective way to recall new vocabulary. Also, it's worth stating that although I do try to do my technical warm-ups 7 days a week in order to keep myself in conditioning, I don't necessarily always practice repertoire every single day. Most of the time, it's more like 5 days in a week generally. Although this can be different depending on how busy I am and what's going on for me that week. I make this statement somewhat guardedly, since I'm admitting here that I do not in fact practice 7 or 8 hours, 7 days a week like many pianists claim to. Actually, I think that if you practice with sufficient intensity in every moment, clarity of mind, and true focus, then far less time will actually suffice for better results. But again, this is just what I have found for myself over time, and no doubt for others they may have found a different way that works for them. Given the sort of work that I do, though, in addition to playing the piano, I can't afford the luxury of being anything less than 100% present every moment when I'm sitting at the piano. So as I said before, as I approach the actual concert day, I may switch over from this kind of paradigm to one focusing a little more on playing the complete program through, slightly under tempo generally. Although not absolutely required, if you know the pieces well enough, this just helps you to fill yourself with complete confidence and steadiness, and to rehearse the changes of mood from one work to another. The last couple of days before a concert, I might also dispense with working on brand new repertoire for a little while so that my mind can be completely focused on the music I will present to an audience. And of course, none of this is set in stone. You always want to leave things open so that if you want to change your approach at any time in the future, you can feel free to do that and adapt to your changing needs. Everyone practices differently at different times of their lives, and that's exactly how it should be. So during my time as a music student and after as a professional, I've seen many wonderful things in my colleagues and friends in the music business, but the number one negative thing that I have sometimes noticed is an unwillingness to adapt and be flexible, a too slavish adherence to system and routine, which it seems to me can really lead to boredom and losing the kind of razor-sharp mental clarity that you really need to make the most of your time alone with the piano. So, thank you very much for watching this video. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment below with your own ideas about about how you go about preparing recital programs or other thoughts you might have based on my ideas here. I'm always happy to hear your comments, even critical ones. I'm quite willing to engage with whatever ideas you might have. Also, please do consider supporting the channel. As always, you can do that very simply through making a donation at www.patreon.com/independent pianist. I also have other methods of donations that you can make listed in the description box. And I also teach lessons online, so if you're really interested in taking your playing to the next level, just get in touch with me at cole@independentpianist.com and we can schedule a consultation. But other than that, please just keep practicing and stay tuned next week. I have a very interesting, exciting, modern piece, something that was written just a few years ago that I'm going to be uploading next week. So I'm looking forward to that. And until next time, all of you out there, take care.